Yeah, well, I mean, you have these passages in the New Testament talk about being judged according to our works, and I know one of the temptations that we can have as believers in Jesus Christ is to sort of look at other people and try to determine, was that person really saved? And especially in situations like this where you have maybe an individual who maybe secretly, and it came out later, was living a double life, and then they die, and people have all these questions. I think it's helpful for us to look at the words of the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 4, beginning in verse 3. Listen to what he said. I think this is just helpful advice for us when we fall into this sort of desire to try and figure out whether or not another person is truly born again. Are they really saved? Paul said, 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 3, "But with me it is a very small thing that I should be judged by you or by any human court. In fact, I don't even judge myself. For I am not aware of anything against myself, but I am not thereby acquitted. It is the Lord who judges me. Therefore," verse 5, "do not pronounce judgment before the time, before the Lord comes, who will bring to light the things now hidden in darkness and will disclose the purposes of the heart. Then each one will receive his commendation from God." You see, the Apostle Paul right there said, look, I don't even judge myself. The Lord is the judge, and I think that there's some wisdom here for us. Now, individually, it's not my job to determine whether or not someone is truly saved, they're really a believer. God is going to handle that on the day of judgment. But Jesus did give us steps for addressing sin and unrepentant sin in the church. And I know a lot of times churches don't practice this, but Jesus outlined a sort of course for church discipline. What do you do when a brother or sister is living in ways that are contrary to what the Word of God teaches? And in that situation, the church should act. And this is why, we talk about things like church discipline. Matthew chapter 18. Jesus said there in verse 15, "If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you've gained your brother. But if he doesn't listen, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector." In other words, at that stage of church discipline, then an individual is excommunicated, they're removed from the fellowship of the church, and they're treated as a non-believer, not in order to punish them, but in order to help them see, look, there's this real spiritual issue here. Your soul is in jeopardy. You're deceived. You can't live in this way and think that everything is fine in terms of your communion with Jesus Christ. And so I think that the church does take action in situations like this, but it's not up to us as individuals to try and judge or figure out whether or not this person was truly a believer. And I think the wisdom that Paul gives us there in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 is really helpful. And so, brother, that's what I would say, Nephi, and thank you for your question.
So great to hear from our listeners in other countries. That's one of the cool things about being on the World Wide Web. Of course, we're on a variety of social media channels. You can find us. You can actually watch the video of this program live on